Welcome to the Going Beyond podcast. I'm your host, Randy Zinn. I'm a mother, an author, and an entrepreneur who is committed to and curious about living a life that is always evolving. This is a lifestyle podcast covering health, both body and mind, self-care, why it is a necessity, and how tough it can be to master, entrepreneurship, its ups and downs, cultural disruption, and the topics we sometimes avoid, as well as love, sex, friendship, and more. This podcast is a place and a community for people who are willing to do the hard work of growth, who want the tools and inspiration to step into it, and who want to grow each and every day of their lives. I interview movement makers, leaders, survivors, writers, and founders. Their stories move me and will move you to cultivate more strength and clarity during every step of your day. Enjoy today's episode, and thanks for spending time with me at this very special place in my life over here at the Going Beyond podcast. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Going Beyond podcast. I'm, as always, incredibly honored that you're here. I know that the time you give, the content you take in is always a choice, and you being here with me really matters to me. So thank you. I'm really excited for today's conversation. It is with a very, very special person that I've been eager to get to know. Her name is Koya Webb. I'm going to tell you a bit about her. I actually had the privilege of being in circle with her. I actually don't remember how long ago it was, maybe like 2 years ago. There was a wellness summit that was opening here in New York. I'm an ambassador for Athleta, and I was invited to an opening event for the Well Summit, and Koya led the opening ceremony. It was exactly that. It truly was a ritual ceremony, a group of people gathered in circle. She took us through an extremely moving talk and meditation. I felt her beauty, inner beauty, outer beauty, her presence. She played music that I still listen to this day. We'll talk about that. And I was really, really touched by what she brought, the authenticity, the love, the clear desire to hold sacred space for the people in the room. And I had some kind of feeling like I would get to know her at some point. And lo and behold, I was perusing Instagram and I came across her Instagram page, which is gorgeous and has many followers. And I was like, Koya, I want to talk to her again. And so I reached out and there she was. She responded. And now we're here today. I'm going to introduce Koya to you, but you might have just heard her giggle. She's here with me. So, hey, Koya.
Hey.
Here we are, finally. Koya and I actually attempted to record this conversation like a few months ago, and Mercury was in retrograde. And everything decided from the technology ethers that we were not meant to talk on that day. We were not meant to do the interview on that day, but we were meant to do it today.
Yes, and we're doing it on an amazing platform that you were sharing with me you now love. And yes. I always say, sometimes it's about that divine timing and the divine alignment. And if we don't judge a situation that happens or doesn't happen, we're able to be available for the beauty of life as it unfolds. And it doesn't always look beautiful when it's kind of falling apart.
Well, the day that we were supposed to talk, I think we've all been in that moment when technology is falling apart. But in this case, here I am ready to record an episode on my podcast. I'm super excited to get to know you. I'm very honored to have you on my show, and nothing is working. And I'm literally sweating. I'm having anxiety. And then you and I get on the line and you're like, honey, take a breath. It's going to be all right. Listen, maybe you need to graduate to Zoom because I think it'll work better. And honey, don't worry, we'll reschedule.
That's me.
That is you. And I really appreciated that. That really helped me in that not so pretty moment.
I think we all need that. We just need that girlfriend, whether it's our best friend or not, but just that girlfriend where we're like, oh my God, could anything go any worse? Just someone to tell us it's okay, and to give us a pass and a breath. And, sometimes like we get in this world and it's go, 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 rush, rush, rush. And it's like, we beat ourselves up as entrepreneurs the most. Like, I should have been this and I should have had this time. And, like you said, experiencing anxiety and things like that. And we have to be more gentle with ourselves, and we have to be more gentle with each other. I've had times where I've been late or something is messed up and they're like, oh, well, this is very unprofessional. Da, 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 da. I'm like, oh my God, my heart is already beating out of my chest because I know it is unprofessional. And it's, and so because I've been in those situations where I'm already at a 10 and someone is just very like unforgiving, to say the least.
Yeah.
I'll just put that very lightly. Unforgiving. And it just makes me feel even worse. And so in that moment, I could tell you were just like, having it out. In that moment, I just want you to feel loved. And, even though we hadn't got a time to get to know each other deeper, I don't know. I just felt like this sisterhood with you. And I was like, it's absolutely fine. Let me give you some advice and let's come back to it. And so I'm just happy that we're on the phone now, and so much has happened since then, and we get to have this deep conversation, and in that moment I could just honor you as just an amazing person, and I would had no doubt we would come back to this.
Oh, I want to give you a squeeze. Air hug. Thank you for that. And before I give like a real proper introduction of you so that our listeners know who they're really listening to here, I just want to say that it is those choices, those small momentary choices, that absolutely do change the energetic experience of a human and then everyone else they touch and all the decisions that they make. Like, the little things really matter. I remember moments like that when, you were incredibly patient and incredibly kind with me. And that reminds me, when someone else has a moment like that, to slow down and turn back to them with patience and forgiveness and whatever else comes up. And I remember even when working on my book, like, so many people gave me just great advice and great wisdom that I took into my book launch. And you know what? It's been my joy to do that for other people. And I'm sure you have many stories just like that. And we live by example. So it's a beautiful thing.
I agree. I've had both. I've had, if it's really bad, it reminds you not to be that way. And if it's really good, it reminds you, you know what? I'm taking that note. I'm going to use that and put it in my toolkit.
100%. Okay. So let me tell people who you are, Koya. I mean, they may already know, but I feel like I must properly introduce you. So, okay. Koya is an internationally recognized yoga teacher, celebrity holistic health coach, author, speaker, and vegan activist whose core mission is to promote daily self-care, oneness, and eco-friendly living to combat some of the world's biggest challenges, including mental health, social injustices, and global warming. And may I just say that living a life like this can combat those often overwhelming challenges. So I give you so much credit. Koya is the founder of Get Loved Up, an international lifestyle community and yoga school that inspires mental, spiritual, and physical health through an app, online courses, retreats, in-person yoga teacher training events, and the Get Loved Up podcast, which I'm sure those of you who are podcast folks will soon head over to. She's also the author of Let Your Fears Make You Fierce: How to Turn Common Obstacles into Seeds for Growth, which was published in 2019. And this book addresses daily self-assessment and mindfulness, understanding of how to make fear your friend, which I do really want to talk about, and using the power of holistic health to heal. All messages that Koya promotes to her devout Instagram following of over 1 million, which is amazing. Yeah. And so your background, which I also really want to hear more about, is as a track and field athlete in the Olympics, which is such an accomplishment. And, going through a debilitating injury, finding yoga, and really completely shifting your focus of how you were giving to the world. And, that story and your experiences have been covered in so many different media outlets. Some of your clients are some of the biggest celebrity names. You are doing your thing. And I'm just excited to be here and to hear more about this really inspiring story. And let's go. I mean, where do you want to start, Koya?
I think just starting with love and realizing as a woman and as a nurturer, we love, and usually we love to the detriment of ourselves as women. And I think the biggest message with Get Loved Up, people ask me, why get loved up? And I'm like, because it is a constant reminder to myself to love myself first and most, and not think that's selfish or narcissistic, but just the more that I love myself, the more that I'll have to love others and love the planet. And so Get Loved Up is a constant reminder to me, and we have different pillars within that. But I think starting there and just, everyone listening, just asking yourself, like, how am I loving myself right now? Because I think at any given moment when we're doing a ton outside of ourselves, especially as moms or entrepreneurs, or even just in a relationship or career, it's just a lot that we give. And my biggest, I think, growth has come in slowing down, nurturing myself, and realizing the more I give myself, the more I can give others. That is, I don't know, that's where I have to start every single day.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. My son is a basketball player. He's 8. And we have cultivated in lots of different ways a slow down meditation, experience at the end of the day at bedtime. And I love to use the Calm app for my meditations and sleep stories. And he loves that LeBron James is like, the voice of calm and has this whole series. And we listened to a talk last night that he gives on the app all about sleep. And, we could hear like a million times about what sleep does for us. But for some reason, he took, for me, listening to his talk about why sleep is so imperative to him as an athlete, as a leader, as someone who is always striving. It's really actually a choice to nurture himself. It's not even just about, sleep gives me rest and I can perform better. It was actually a much more deeper, soulful choice. And it really reminds me of like the spirit of where you're coming from, Koya. Like when you're like, this is a constant choice to ask myself, am I loving myself right now in this moment? And when we really slow down, I agree with you, especially for women, it's not always happening.
Right. Exactly. I mean, it's not always happening. And even if we want it to be happening, we're so concerned, especially the sensitive of us, with loving others and giving to others and doing for others and the approval of others, that we just forget. And then we run out of time. There's only 24 hours in a day. And if we don't consciously put that time in there for ourselves, it's not going to do itself. And especially, you say you have an 8-year-old. I mean, you have so much as a mother, you're putting so much time, energy, love, compassion, to raise your son to the best of your ability. And if you don't make that time for yourself, it doesn't just happen. There's sleep. And then once you get up, you're already, making food and putting out clothes and all these things. And then, and then you're working. And then after school, you're doing something else. So I really, I'm not a mom yet, but I have hats off to moms, because it's just so much when you're giving to someone outside of yourself, or you're giving to something. If you're not a mom, if you have a job that you're giving to outside of yourself. And I, working with a lot of people, especially entrepreneurs, I've come to find that we just keep filling our schedule, and our me time gets less and less. The meditation time gets less. The yoga time is less or non-existent. The food time, I mean, I know a lot of people that just live off of protein shakes and bars. And I know, because that was me at one time. I know how to cook and I love food. I'm a vegan foodie, but there was a time in my life where I just wasn't making time to make a meal. And so I think it's just so important for us to squeeze that time back in. So that's one thing that I do in my book, Let Your Fears Make You Fierce, is we make this time every day for reflections and rituals. And when you do those reflections and rituals, it really takes care of your mental, your spiritual, your physical health.
I love that you brought up the word ritual. I've been thinking a lot about that recently, that word. Remember how I said these conversations always happen divinely, like we're supposed to talk about things that are up? Ritual is something I've been really thinking about. And I think that it's something actually really missing from our, like generally speaking, our culture right now. I think those that are maybe a little bit more embedded in, you know, perhaps certain religious experiences, there's more ritual. But I think that humans, you know, that's sort of our mode to finding the meaning and to finding the love is through more of a ritual experience. And I feel like that is what so many people really lack.
I agree because it's consistency, and it's consistency with intention. To me, that's what a ritual is. And so it's something that you do every day for a reason. And let's say, why every day do I wake up and meditate? Because I know that that starts my day in a calm space. Why do I practice yoga? Because mentally and spiritually, it moves the breath through my body. I'm connecting with my breath. I'm, you know, in a more aware state, a more intentional state than if I just wake up and start making breakfast and then start taking phone calls, or if I just wake up and just pop on social media. So it just gives me an opportunity to go within and ask myself again, how am I feeling? How am I loving myself? And when you start from that intentional space with that ritual of, for me, meditation, breath work, yoga, and then I have my morning smoothie, starting my day like that gives me a chance to pour into myself. So that's my self-love portion. And so once I'm all loved up, I can hop on the podcast call, I can go see friends, I can do whatever I need to do, but I'm not from this drained space. A lot of people wake up drained, pop a muffin and a coffee or just a coffee, and then run out into the day, right? And there was no self-care there, unfortunately. And that's the norm.
It is the norm. If we're talking about like a chicken and an egg, though, it's like sometimes it feels like you have to like love yourself enough to even start the daily ritual. But wouldn't you argue that even if you can't totally contact that love yet, but you want it, the ritual helps you contact it?
100%, 100%. Like I tell people, even if you don't have 30 minutes, like you can just do 10 minutes, even if you close your eyes and say an affirmation and take a deep breath, like, okay, I'm going to start my day intentionally. And then one day out of the week, have a smoothie instead of coffee with like, you know, it just, whatever it is, it can be something so small. But once you start the ritual, however you can start it and however small, that feeling that you're going to get of feeling better, more energy, more just mental clarity from doing like just a little bit of breath work or meditation in the morning, it's going to make you feel so better. You're like, wow, if that's what I got out of 5 or 10 minutes, what will happen if I do 20 minutes? And then you're going to be like, man, I feel even better. What will happen if I do 30 minutes? So as you said, once you start doing a little bit, it becomes addictive because you start to realize I have more energy. And wait a minute, I just said this the other day, I feel like I have more time, and I don't. I didn't expand time. I am doing less in a day, but I feel like I have more time.
Right, because it's really all a perception, isn't it? An experience.
It's all perception. And when you realize that I am here to love and be loved, and it's not about accomplishments, it's not about how many things you get done or how many check boxes you tick off. It's really about your experience each day. Like, are you super stressed out every day? Like, I mean, and, you know, it's normal to have stress and anger and frustration. Like, all those things are normal, right? But if you find every day that your state is in more of a state of fear and stress and chaos, right? Versus love and compassion and patience, you know, and these things, then that lets you know that delicate balance that we learned in The Lion King is a bit off, right? And so that's my checks and balance. I ask myself, am I more in a very chaotic state, or am I more at peace? And if I find myself, and sometimes it happens, like I can know all these things and write a book and all this stuff, but here I am. I just got off of traveling to Bali for a retreat. And then I came back 2 days in LA before heading to Miami for an event at Sacred Space. And then I headed on a cruise for 7 days teaching yoga every day. And then to Houston for a yoga expo. and then back home. So you better believe there are some times where I'm like, where's my head? Like running around too much in one day, all these phone calls, all these demand on my life and my time. And I had to reel it back. Every time I felt myself overwhelmed, I was like, okay, let me reel it back. Let me make more time. Let me sleep a little bit longer. And so it's not about being perfect. It's about developing a practice and developing these rituals to make sure that you stay in balance, even if your life gets overwhelming at times.
Yes, I love that. I'd love to talk a little bit more. I want to get into your story too, but let's talk a little bit about, the fear state, because, you're really committed in your book to, as your title says, letting your fears or inviting your fears to make you fierce. And I'm the first to admit that my fears don't make me feel fierce. They make me feel small, they make me feel repressed and tight and anxious. And I don't want them to. And I have, similar to you, I feel like I'm one of the blessed people that actually have some knowledge and have some tools and have some things. But, we're human and the world is tough. There's a lot of heavy duty stuff out there. So talk to us a little bit about fears making you fierce as opposed to what it does to most of us.
Well, I think for all of us, fear can be a bit daunting and the initial shock of it, right? Because you're not expecting it. But once you realize it and acknowledge it, and acknowledging fear is so important. Just saying, this scares me, this frustrates me, this makes me angry, da da da. Acknowledgement, not like, oh, didn't happen. This is not real. It's happening, right? So acknowledgement is the first part. But then also I like to look at fear as my friend. Because if you look at it as your friend versus an invader, you're going to have a more balanced physical response to it. And to me, fear is feedback to where we need more love, where we need more love in our life, where we need more love in the world. Because it's like personal fear could be like, oh, I'm afraid to go out for this interview because I'm afraid I'm going to get rejected, right? Well, that's feedback. What is that feedback? Like maybe you need to prepare more. Maybe you need to know how worthy you are and how if you get this job, you're a blessing to them. Or maybe that fear is about the world. Maybe it's like, oh my God, what is this world going to come to with the president?
And as an example.
As an example, right? Fear. We all have this collective fear, right?
Yeah.
But it's showing us where we need more love. Like, what can we do with our lives to make a difference in the world? How can we get more people to the polls? How can we learn a little bit more about the government so that we can make a change? You see? So even though it seems daunting, if we break it down to what is this fear giving me feedback for? Like, what is it that I can do? And we all can do something. We don't have to all do everything. We don't even all have to do the same thing, right? We all just have to do something that feels good in our soul when we feel that fear come up, every time we feel that fear come up.
So it's like being honest, being real, saying it out loud, asking yourself like that fear space, like what's the vulnerability that's really there? What's the need? Where's the love go in this equation? And then from that place, you can actually see the action possibility.
Absolutely. And I think what really keeps us in a fear state is feeling like we're powerless. And there's nothing that we can do. Once you shift that to empowering yourself by saying, this is what I'm going to do to make a difference in this way. And you can use that for whatever you feel for. This is how I'm going to, step into my faith, if you will, because when you have faith, you believe like, okay, if I do this one thing, and maybe I'll encourage other people to do this one thing, it's going to make a change in my life personally. It's going to make a change in the world. So I think once we become empowered, we're able to step into a place of love. I also talk about gratitude a lot. Like once we realize like, hey, I'm grateful I even got a job offer, or I'm grateful I even have an opportunity to switch things around in the world if I live differently, if I consume differently, right? And so once we become empowered, once we become grateful, we start to see that it isn't all like doom and gloom. We start to see that our life, just the fact that we are breathing is enough to make a change. And the more action steps we take whenever we feel fear, and we take that fear as feedback, the more change we're going to make in the world and in our lives.
Can you tell us a story, Koya, like of a moment where you really feel like this process took you from one place to another?
100%. One of the stories that really shifted my life from a fear state, a doom state, to a love state was when I was running track and field. And, I was slated to win the conference, and this was my ticket out of the country. I'm a small town girl. I was raised in Humboldt, Tennessee, in the sticks, Southern Baptist. I made mud pies for fun. I lived in a trailer. Me and my mom and dad, my brothers and sisters. It was 4 children, 2 adults, 6 people, and it was not a double wide trailer, okay? We didn't have much, but I did grow up close to nature. And I never really thought outside. I never did think like, oh, I'm going to live the life that I'm living now, right? So when I got a full scholarship and I was like, oh my goodness, I could really travel the world and I could see things I've never saw before. I got excited. I was like, if I could just run around this track and do these things, then, this is my ticket. So here I am on my golden ticket using my physical attributes, right, to further my education, and not only further my education, but allow me to see the world and allow me to make a difference in the world. So I was like, you know what? I want to go to the Olympics. I want to win this medal because if I do that, I can make a difference in the world. And I was all about making impact, even as a little girl. And so I was there. And on my sophomore year, I remember walking home from class and I got this sharp pain in my back. And I thought I'd been shot. It was excruciatingly painful. I dropped to the floor. I'm like, wow. I'm looking around like, what just happened? And I end up going to the doctor and they say, you have a stress fracture, your 4th lumbar, and you're out for the season. And I'm like, what? Because everything that I did was all about track and field. And so the grades that I made, the food that I ate, like everything was circled around it. And so when they told me that, I'm like, wait, this was not the plan. This is not in the cards. And I think everyone can relate how you can, whether it be in a relationship or a career or whatever, when you have all your eggs in this basket and you're like, okay, this is what it is. And then all of a sudden it's completely taken away, the whole basket. You're like, wait, what now? And so I went in a deep depression, like, what am I going to do with my life? Like, I don't have anything else, and even though I made decent grades and my coach was like, you can be a coach. I'm like, a coach, like I never thought of that, that wasn't in the cards for me. So I was in a really dark place and I was crying in classes just because I'd be fine. And then I would just think about what am I going to do with my life? And I just start crying. And she sent me to the counselor and the counselor told me to try yoga. And I was like, what's yoga? Is that worshiping idol gods? Is that some Buddha statue? Like, I just didn't get it. Again, I'm Southern Tennessee. We didn't grow up with yoga and Buddha and all these things. So at first I was very reluctant and a little bit fearful, because I'm like, I don't know about this. And she's like, no, it's just stretching and, it is going to be good for you. And so at this point, again, I'm depressed. I'm like, I don't know if anything can be good for me right now. So I go into the class, I see all these people doing these poses, and I'm looking around like, this is not for me. I'm fast, right? I'm an athlete. I'm a heptathlete. I do high jump, long jump, shot. I'm just an active person. People sitting on the floor doing this, and I'm kind of intimidated. I'm kind of like, why am I here? And I remember doing a headstand and feeling like my head isn't made for this. Like, I felt like my brain was going to ooze out and splatter across the floor. I'm like, how are these people on their heads for this amount of time? I was like, this is just not me, and the teacher saw how frustrated I was. And she came over to me and she was like, Koya, she's like, I just want you to breathe with me. And so I took a deep inhale and exhale. And I was like, I felt the chills in my body. I'm like, now that felt good. That was really good, you know? And once I felt that energy which now I know is spirit, I feel like breath is spirit moving in the body. From the day we are born, we get the breath of life, until the day we end the world, we stop breathing. And so I truly believe breath is spirit in the body. And whenever you can connect to the breath, you can bring yourself to a state of peace and a state of calm. So that's what the teacher did for me that day. And after about a year of breath work and yoga and taking care of myself, because I wasn't taking care of myself before. I was so focused on winning and being the best and working so hard stress fracture is overuse energy. I was pushing too hard, too strong, going at it without taking a breath. And so after a year of nurturing myself with, swimming and biking and yoga, I came back to win the conference meet and, move forward. And that's why I moved to California, was to train at the Olympic Training Center. Now, eventually I got injured again and decided to go back to yoga and ended up getting my yoga teacher training. And that is why I am now a yoga and holistic health coach. And now I'm using my story and my mission to help others heal through trauma and realize that if you have your breath, you have enough to make a life for yourself.
I love letting my listeners know about great companies and products doing great work in the world. This month's podcast sponsor is exactly that. Let me introduce you to Real Paper. Real is a tree-free bamboo toilet paper that does good and feels good. Real is made out of 100% bamboo because bamboo is soft, strong, and a better sustainable alternative to using virgin trees. So no cutting trees down just to wipe your tush. Plus, it is conveniently delivered to your door in plastic-free packaging with free shipping. Real's flexibility allows you to choose the frequency you want it delivered or buy when needed. Real also values giving back. For every roll purchased, it helps fund access to clean toilets for those in need. And now you can get $10 off your first subscription order or 20% off your single purchase order using the code BEYOND, capital BEYOND. Visit realpaper.com, that's REELPAPER.com to shop. Do good, feel good with Real. Thanks, Real, for sponsoring the Going Beyond podcast. It's really powerful because I think the story you tell, I can imagine it being told in so many different forms, which makes you so relatable and allows you to relate to so many people, I'm sure, because that moment of your body giving out on you, like you said, that could be almost anything giving out on anyone. It's a symbol of what we think it's supposed to be and it being something else.
Absolutely. And I don't think anyone is ready for when that, sometimes you have signs, but when it happens all of a sudden, like a sudden job loss or oh my goodness, what just happened, in the news with Kobe and his family, it's just all of a sudden, life just changed. There's no warning. There's no buildup. There's just, oh my God. I can't even fathom or imagine the amount of just devastation, right, for everyone involved, in that incident, and people all around the world that are involved in these incidents where you did not know you were going to wake up and half your house was going to be bombed, and you didn't wake up and know half your family was going to be gone or a loved one. You don't prepare for that type of stuff. And so for me, it's about meeting people right there, because it's hard enough for things you prepare for, but really we have to go to those things that you had no clue. And now you have to deal with all these emotions of devastation, of loss, of grief, of shame, of guilt, you go through every single emotion, I feel, when things happen to you all of a sudden with no warning sign. Because, it's just so much to look at. At first it's them, and then it's you, and then it's God. It's what? You question everything. And I think when you go back to the breath and you say, I am still breathing, I am still here, and now how can I move forward in love? That's what you have to go back through every single time and every single situation to get through the pain and to get through the fear.
Yeah. Koya, this was moment number 2 where I said, the topics that come up are coming up for a reason. I just recorded an interview last week that I think is going up next week. Time gets very confusing on a podcast, doesn't it? And it was right after Kobe's horrendous accident and just all the loss. And I, sadly enough, lost my father in a plane crash 14 years ago. And that was my moment of, in no way could I ever have imagined or ever could have prepared for that happening to me and to all of us, and all of us meaning anyone that loved him. And the journey of healing and recovering is one, infiltrated in every single thing that I do and am and will always be. I accept that now. Like, this is the journey of a lifetime. And, bringing it back to the Kobe incident, like, I'm the first to admit it is a traumatic response. Like, I have had a hard time ever since that happened, just over a week ago. And it's physical, it's like, it's deep physical embodied trauma, and it is there. But back to the podcast, I had this interview last week with a woman who specializes in processing and moving through trauma. And I spoke to her the day after the accident, and it was amazing. It felt like the conversation was meant for me, even though we were talking about that. But I find it interesting that this is coming up again, because ever since the accident of Kobe, my physical body is feeling a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of like heaviness in me. And I think what you're talking about when you say you got to come back to the breath, you got to come back to the truth of this moment is so true. Because our body, our mind goes into the past. It goes into anything that could happen in the future. But all we really have is breath, which, as you say, is spirit.
And that is the present. And I would definitely highly, highly recommend breath work. I've used breath work a lot to move physical trauma, anxiety, tightness, and things out of the body. Yeah. I feel like breath work is moving breath through the spirit, through the body at a very high rate. And so it can clear some of that physical heaviness. So I highly recommend that. And it really, some people are more sensitive than others. And especially, my condolences to you and what you experienced, because as you said, once something has happened, you never know when it's going to be re-triggered or you're going to be reminded. Yeah. And then you're re-experiencing this event, right? So that's what's happening. And so once you bring it back to, okay, like you just did, deep breath, that helped. Right. And you keep breathing, you do breath work exercises, you allow the emotions to process again. Right. It's just like if you have a scar, once, it's not like you'll never have a scar again or never have a cut again. You just have to give it time to heal. You have to give it air. You can't necessarily cover it up. If it's really raw, it takes more time and attention, right? Like when something first happened. But if there is a wound, you have to give it time to heal. And so what has happened is like, this has been an opening up of an old wound for you. And so it will have, instead of saying, okay, well, this is not the same thing. Well, it is hitting you. And so just being aware, acknowledging it like you just did and like you did before, and then allowing yourself to heal through it again. I think it's a beautiful thing. And there might be something that comes out of this that is not only a blessing for your life, but a blessing for so many others. And that's what I like to look at, like the silver lining of, okay, let me process this. Maybe it's the way you even process it, the breath work that you do or other things that you do to process it, that's going to be that beautiful thing that blesses you and your community. But I truly believe when we return to the breath, return to spirit, and we ask those questions like, how am I feeling? How can I breathe more love into the situation? The answer will appear.
I agree. I love, as painful as all of these things are, I love the gems that come out of it. And it really, that is, as you say, the blessing, the ability to connect with people and their stories, the ability to find these tools that, improve your life and share them, to be a model in the best kind of way to show people what survival really looks like. That's powerful.
It is so powerful. And when I think about, Kobe specifically and the Mamba mentality and his, everything that he was and everything that he spoke and the father he was, and, even looking at videos of him and his daughter. And, I really believe, when anyone leaves this planet, to celebrate their lives, if it was one day, or if it was 20 days, or if however old that person was. And I know you've experienced this as well. It's like, you have to remember the beautiful part, and you really have to celebrate the time that you have with them more than that instant or more than not having them, right?
Yeah.
The more you can go back and say, oh my God, like I remember when, and I keep this with me and I hold this with me, because we all eventually will transition, right? It's never fun when it's drastic. And that's what we're acknowledging and breathing into. But when we go back to like, okay, we all will transition, and how can I value, honor, keep the messages with me? I feel like that's breathing love into the situation instead of being overcome by fear. Maybe it's an opportunity to go back and just reiterate like what it is your father brought to your life, or what it is male figures bring. You know, you never know. Whatever it is, I feel like going through those checks, but that's something that I do whenever I feel energy from a certain person or incident. I go back and I'm like, wow, what has this person brought to my life? And that's what I did in this situation. I lost my grandmother, and she was like a mother to me. She kept me half of the time. And every time I think about her, and I get a little sad, and then I'm like, I just start to pull out the things that I remember about her and how she taught me the states and how she taught me how to count and how to shop and how to make my bed. And then I'm smiling, you know, but there is that initial like, oh, I miss her so much. Like, I wish she was here to see like what her teaching and everything she was, like how I blossomed. But she is seeing, and that's how I remind myself, like, she's seeing and she's happy and she's here with me at all times. And I feel like remembering that when we do have these losses in our lives, physical losses, and remembering that we are spiritual beings. And even though our loved ones are not in the physical realm, they're still with us spiritually. I believe that has helped me get through some of the tough physical times. My uncle, you know, transitioned not too long ago as well. And it's just like, before, I know I heard his voice, like, and I feel like always having that whenever he comes up, I'm like, okay, talk to me. Let's talk. Let's hang out, you know? And that's helped me a lot, just kind of stay connected to my loved ones, just remembering that they're always here. They're always around. And that's what oneness is. That's what I talk about in Get Loved Up. It's self-love, oneness, and then the love of the planet. And oneness is realizing that we're all interconnected in some way spiritually. And if you really believe that, you realize that we have this spiritual plane, we have this physical plane, and at any moment we can connect to that spiritual connection.
I agree. I mean, coming full circle on all the things we're talking about, I think that the rituals of connection and breathing and feeling is part of what reminds us of that truth. And I think, you know, when you think of these words like fierce and fears and fierce, it can sound like it's supposed to be some sort of, you know, giant concept. But actually, I think that it's moments like this where we are talking about deep loss and how we navigate it and owning the feelings, but also connecting with what we know is true, that oneness. That's actually living in a fierce way. It can feel quiet, it can feel introspective, but it's actually fierce work in the world because it's in some ways easier and almost encouraged by our culture to sort of just gloss over things and just move past it and then like deal with whatever the results are of just sort of stuffing everything away somewhere. But if you can slow down and feel and talk about it and connect, that's beautiful. That's living a fierce life, I think.
100%. I totally agree. And a lot of people feel like fierce is like this hard or aggressive, but fierce is just really breathing into who you truly are and letting your light shine no matter what.
Yes. What is it like talking to you, Koya? I'm like imagining you just talked about, you know, yoga retreats and teaching and trainings and all over the world. Like, what is it like to practice with you? Like, I want to know what it's like to be your student.
What I hear the most is a spiritual experience. I mean, we're definitely doing a lot of physical things, but I breathe spirit into everything that I do. So, you know, a day in the life, I guess you would say, at my yoga teacher training or retreat, we wake up and we just start like with very gentle music, which you've experienced before at the grand opening.
Yes.
I love mantra music and just very gentle, intentional music to open up the day. And then we flow. We start to flow. We do breath work. We connect to our breathing because that really calms down our parasympathetic system and just really puts the body in a healthy state. Because sometimes even sleeping, we can have anxiety, or waking up, we can have anxiety. But when you come back to the breath, it calms your nervous system. And then we flow for the physical body. And then after, we have a sharing circle. And in that sharing circle, I believe you have to reveal it to heal it. People are sharing things that came up for them in the breath work or yoga, and there's healing that happens in that space. And then after that, we journal and we write down what came up, maybe something we didn't want to share. And so that's how we start every single morning, with breath, with flow, with sharing, and with reflection. And I feel like that's how we should start every single day. So it's almost like I'm teaching that, and you get to learn that, whether it be for 21 days or a 7-day retreat or a 3-day weekend retreat, or now this year I'm going to start doing 1-day retreats where we just start with that. And then we have a nourishing meal. Usually I start my day with a superfood smoothie or superfood bowl. And we just put high vibrational foods into our bodies. And I truly believe when you start your day like that, you're starting your day in a very positive place. And a lot of people just say, like, I've never felt this good, and I've never felt so connected to myself.
That sounds amazing. I want to come.
Come to Mykonos.
Oh my God. I love Mykonos. That is.
I've never been. You've been?
I have. Yeah. It was like a bit of another lifetime, but it's a beautiful place. So beautiful. Yeah.
I can't wait to go. We're going in October.
Oh, okay. I'm going to check it out. No, I would love to be in person with you again. So one more thing I'd love to just hear a little bit more about, because it's like a piece of things that I feel like I could imagine what you'd say, but I know you're going to say something better. Talking about, all of this work, this deep love work, this breath work, this fueling your body work, all of it, and your massive commitment to the challenges of the world, to mental health, social injustices, global warming. What is the bridge?
What is the bridge? The bridge is the breath, because when you are working with, deep self-care, social, just like all these things, it's going to get intense, and it's going to get scary, and it's going to get frustrating. And you have to remember to return to the breath, because the breath is the bridge between spirit and whatever it is, between spirit and yourself, your personal issues, between, spirit is the bridge. And when you're able to, and it's something we can all do. Like sometimes there are many modalities out there, from tapping to massage to floating, you name it. There's a lot of like these things that cost money, which is fine. Acupuncture. There are a lot of beautiful modalities that can help you calm down and return to a space of love. But your breath is absolutely free. Okay. So no one can say I can't afford it or it's not available for me. And so I like to return to the breath, and the breath is the bridge that can get you through anything you go through. And so I'm not just saying it from a space of not having gone through anything. I, went through the injury, yes, but also in my book, I share, instances of a sexual assault that I've been through and that were really tough, like eating disorders that I've been through, just different things. And I've shared those things in my book just to be a representative of, one, you don't have to be perfect. 2, you can experience some really challenging things and get through them and still be a huge blessing to the world. So I feel like a lot of times when we're in that dark space, we feel like we're never going to get out of it, or we feel like we're useless, or what now? But as long as we can keep breathing and keep putting one foot in front of the other and keep moving forward and breathing, we will get to the other side one day at a time. And so that's kind of my way out of depression. My way out of the darkness is just to breathe.
So simple, so profound.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And, it's something that I teach, and I'm going to be teaching even more. I just got my breathwork certification last year. And I did, Kapalabhati breath and breath of fire and these different types of breathing. But the holotropic breathwork that I'm doing now is an even more powerful way, I would say, to move breath through the body to clear past trauma, which is what I'm really, really putting an emphasis on in 2020. So I'm going to be teaching more of that coming soon and more online, because I really want to give people as many tools as possible to heal, because I feel like we're all here to be a blessing to the world. No matter how long we're here to bless the world with our unique gifts and talents. And if any way I can help someone get through any type of trauma and, be more of themselves and be more that they're meant to be in the world, I feel like my purpose is being fulfilled.
Yes. Amen. You have such a beautiful online presence, Koya. Like, I almost want to record another episode and okay, let's talk business talk. Okay. Because some of I'm really, really curious about how women build their businesses and how almost the choices that you make, because, you could start a YouTube channel or you could start a podcast. You could build your Twitter following or build your Instagram following. I mean, there's a million choices that you make along the way when you're expressing your brand and expressing your message. I always find that so interesting. And you've really just done such a beautiful job of sharing something that's so powerful and so beautiful on very specific platforms. So I love how you're putting the message out.
Thank you so much. And for me, it's just, I tried all of it, all the social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, you name it. And for me, I just had to find out what felt the best for me authentically. How did I like to express? What did I like? I'm still trying to do other platforms, but for me, Instagram was the thing. I like just posting a picture and a caption, and that's how I started. And I honestly started without business in mind. I started just to hold myself accountable to my yoga practice because I knew how good it was for me,
Yeah.
And that just goes to show, if you do what you love and what you're most passionate about, don't worry about what everyone else is doing. I mean, you look at people for inspiration, but you really do have to connect with your breath and connect with spirit for your own specific life and find out what you are passionate, what lights your soul on fire, and then start putting energy towards that every single day. And so that's what I did. It lit my soul on fire to do yoga every day. And it made me accountable when I posted about it. And then I started doing challenges, and that made me even more accountable. And then I was inspiring other people because then they started doing the challenges. And then, snowball effect, right? Then I started breathing into opportunities. But when I first started getting opportunities from brands, specifically, let's say yoga legging companies, because I was doing yoga, I was doing it for free. And it's so important that whatever you choose to do, I'm not saying do it for free, but be willing to like it so much that you be willing to do it for free. And then business wise, you have to put a value on it, right? Eventually, I had to realize that I couldn't turn the lights on with a yoga leggings.
That's a really good, I like that one, because I also have gotten a lot of free leggings.
They get overwhelmed. They come to a point where you hit that mark of 50 and you're like, okay.
You can't shut your drawer anymore.
Right. Not only can you not shut your drawer, you can't even, you got your friends and they're like, I got enough yoga leggings, Koya. If you give me that for a gift again, I'm going to think you don't care. So it's you just have enough. And I had to realize, and that's when I realized okay, this is my value. I'm bringing massive value to the space. And so how much is my overhead per month? How much am I spending? And I go through business courses with all of my alumni, and people are like, how much do I charge? And it's so interesting because I started charging, I want to say $25 per class. And, for a session now, I can charge all the way up to, $350 for a session. Or if I'm doing an event, $1,000 to $5,000 for an event, and so it's a big range out there. So how do you decide what your rate is? And I really tell people, if you look at it when you're just starting, there's levels to this, but I would say just starting, you really want to have your basic needs met. If you don't have your basic needs met, because it depends on where you live, what you're doing, how you like to live, right? So I feel like anyone that's really interested in the business, to come from an authentic space and a real space, find out what your overhead is, how much you're paying for rent, how much food you're eating, how much you're spending money each month, and just find out how much you need in a month, how much you need in a year, and then start to see, okay, well, many hours do I want to work in a day? And how much would I have to charge to reach my bare minimum? So that's your minimum. You can't go any lower than that. And then you start building on top of that based on your expertise and education. But I tell everyone to start there, doing something you really love, and then charging at least enough to take care of your basic needs. And once you start there, that's a good base to where you feel comfortable, you feel safe, you feel happy, and then you start building from there.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And it's also, I always look at opportunities from, a very kind of like wide lens. If I'm invited to speak and there's no pay, well, then can you buy my book? Can you share it, with your attendees? Can I sell book? Like there's, it's really, really smart to always look at, an opportunity of, who are you meeting? Who are you connecting with? How is your network expanding? You also have to be creative. And when you work for yourself and you're an entrepreneur, that's also a necessary way to think about it.
100%. And I like to tell the people this when we talk about abundance, like money is energy, right? Abundance is abundance in friend, abundance in time. But when you talk specifically, a lot of people have an unhealthy relationship with money. But once you realize, oh, it's just energy, it's energy you exchanging when you don't have a physical exchange. So like you said, if there is no exchange of money, is there another physical exchange or something that can be done, or a credit or something to where I feel an energetic balance here?
Yes.
Right. And so when you talk about energy versus just money, you realize how abundant you really are. Like I obviously had to have some type of concept beyond my current state to reach the level of abundance that I'm at now. And the biggest thing I had to realize, the biggest thing that changed my life was looking at money as energy. And the more energy I put out, the more energy I'm going to have coming back at me. And some of it's going to be in the form of money in the bank. And some of it is going to be in the form of favors and opportunities and all kinds of things. And so now I feel that I have a healthy mix of abundance from different places. I have abundance of love, abundance of friends, abundance of, platform on social media, but it took a lot of time of putting into that. Like, I don't want anyone to ever feel like, oh, this happened overnight or this happened because of A, B, C, or D. It's been hard. It's been a journey. It's been frustrating. Heck, the algorithms change every single day.
Oh my God. I can't with the algorithms.
You can't be attached to it. And people that are attached to it check out. And I'm like, one thing that's not happening is I'm not checking out, because I know if you stay in the game, you eventually figure it out. If it's emotionally taxing and you don't feel safe, then that's a whole nother conversation. But if you're like, oh, I'm not winning, so I'm checking out, like that's really not learning. It's like you have to really get frustrated, get that fear state, get in that fear state and take fear as your feedback to find the love. Maybe you don't love Instagram. Maybe you love YouTube. Maybe you don't love YouTube. Maybe you love Facebook. Maybe you don't love social media at all. Maybe you want to go out and speak to people in person. Maybe you want to do retreats. You see? So every point of fear is feedback, and it's up to each of us individually to decide what we want our life to look like. It is our choice as a human being to decide how we want to navigate this plane.
It is. And I love that you said this did not happen overnight, because people think, looking at someone like yourself, like boom, all of a sudden you had 1 million followers, boom, all of a sudden you have brands paying you, boom, you have retreats in Mykonos. No, honey, I'm sure you have worked your buns off and you have given so much love and energy and patience and had your difficult moments and your questions of whether you could do it and all of it over the course of probably years. And now it looks the way it does. And I think it's really important that people understand that an overnight success takes a very long time to create.
100%. And thank you for saying that. And I have to be, honest and transparent. Even now, I go through hard times every single day. So even though I have, this retreat and this lifestyle, with, the more you expand, the more challenges you're going to get to make sure that you can stay at this level of expansion.
Of course.
Right?
Of course.
You don't just get all expansion and just like, woohoo, hats off. I mean, I know it seems like that, and we might look at that off a quick platform, social media. But so many times, you know, you hear people saying like, oh my God, like I just went through like this really bad breakup, or I just had someone completely pull out the rug from under me. You know, this happens all of the time. You know, I have a team of 10 people, you know, and people think I do it myself. I don't. I got 3 people running my Instagram and I have executive assistant, a personal assistant. Like I have a lot of people helping me keep my life together. And it would be unfair for me not to mention them, because I feel like it's unrealistic to try to run something. I mean, some people can do it solo, and hats off to them, but I'm just going to be honest. I am not doing this by myself. I have a ton of help, a ton of people that devote their entire day to helping me, you know, continue to deliver content that changed lives. So, but it took me a while. It took a lot of fear, because I mean, one year I remember making a certain amount, and then next year I gave that same amount to my staff. You know, and I had to trust that I would make enough to take care of myself. I remember another year I went nomadic. I didn't even pay for rent for myself, because I wanted a team, and I knew that a team was going to help me build even more. So there's so many times where you got to make that gut-wrenching decision to have faith and let your fears make you fierce. And you have to move forward in faith and know if you're doing what you love and you're, you know, balanced. I mean, you know, there's some risks, but you also have to take calculated risks, right? But when you are in that space to where you're doing what you love and you're moving forward with integrity, you're checking in with spirit, you're divinely guided, then it's not perfect, but it works. Doesn't mean you won't fail, because I really believe you don't fail unless you stop trying. So many people, especially, you know, in the basketball, you know, bringing it back there, it's like, you know, how many times do you have to shoot until you get like, you know, good at shooting shots over and over and over? And still, a high caliber player is going to miss a layup or is going to miss a free throw shot. And so as entrepreneurs, we're going to make some bad decisions, right? And we can't let that one bad decision, that one failure, that one deal that we didn't get break our hearts so much that we stop trying. We have to realize that that's just part of the game. We got to get back in there, and we just got to do our best and know that, hey, this is our passion. And if you're committed to something, then it's not what you do, it's how you're doing it.
Yes. I love it. Koya, this was so beautiful. Before we go, tell everybody where to find you, find your book, participate in all the good things you're doing.
Thank you. Well, I just want to say it's been such an honor to talk to you and share with you. And thank you so much for building this platform that's inspiring so many people worldwide to live a healthier lifestyle.
Oh, thank you, Koya. I'm really honored and really happy that this happened. And I know it was meant to happen today.
Me too. And I mean, people, you know, can find me, like you said, on the Get Loved Up podcast. So pop over, podcasters, and subscribe and let me know what you think about some of the shows, mostly around holistic health and wellness and self-care, social justice and sustainability. And then KoyaWebb.com. You can find all of my online courses there, which include yoga, breathwork, meditation, plant-based recipes, and more. And then, you know, my website also has my retreats and my yoga teacher training. So I hope some of you will join me.
I'm sure they're going to. And obviously your book is sold everywhere books are sold.
Yes. Let your fears make you fierce. How to turn common obstacles into seeds for growth.
Awesome. Well, Koya, thank you so much, and continue to love up on yourself, because I know that love is just giving so much to so many people and to the planet, and it's so needed.
I 100% agree. And thank you so much for your love today. Have a beautiful rest of your day.
You too. And to Beyond Podcast listeners, I love you. Thank you for hanging out with me here. And if you haven't yet, definitely give this podcast a 5-star review. It is greatly appreciated and does move the needle on this podcast success. And I look forward to hanging out with you next time. Until then, take care, be well, bye.